Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I'm preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone, if you're watching and haven't subscribed yet, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be notified of when new content comes available. Also, if you enjoy the content or find it useful, make sure you click like and feel free to share the video with others. So in this video, I'm going to look at the last objective within the Create Ansible Plays and Playbooks objective group, and that is create playbooks to configure systems to a specified state. Before I dive in, I want to remind you that this is not intended to be authoritative information, nor is it intended to be a tutorial, but rather it's an opportunity for me to go over whatever the objective is at hand and talk about it and try some examples and such, with the hopes of, at the end of the video, I feel pretty confident about the objective and will be able to handle any exam tasks that would be related to the objective. Obviously, if at the end of the video I don't feel confident about it, then I will add that to my list of some things to go over between now and my exam, which is, as of today, 15 days away. So getting right into it, since the objective is create playbooks to configure systems to a specified state, I've given myself a little objective list here, and I'm going to try to do all of this using playbooks. And I know I've worked with some playbooks in some of the other videos, but since there's an objective specifically for this, I figured it would be worth my time to practice that. So one thing to note with this is probably how the exam is going to be. Now, of course, there's no way for me to know, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to say because of NDA, but generally, Red Hat exams are performance-based, or at least all the ones that I've touched, which so far have been one, RHCSA, are performance-based, and you'll have an environment to work in, and you'll have a list of tasks, kind of like what I have here in my text document that says, do these things. And then at the end, hopefully it's configured right, and hopefully everything will survive a reboot. And I would imagine, since the RHCE exam is based around Ansible, the idea is if you're given a fresh environment, will your playbooks and such run and configure the fresh environment to whatever it needs to be. So on that note, one of the things that you're going to want to do on this exam, or RHCSA, is before you do anything to read through all of the objectives. And the reason for that is that not all of the objectives necessarily should be done in the order that they're presented. Now, you can do whatever you want. The end goal is to get stuff configured the way it needs to be configured. And of course, these objectives, I already have an idea of what they are since I wrote them prior to making the video. But I want to point out kind of an example of this, such as the first objective is to set all lab nodes to be managed with the user Ansible. I talk about, have to be able to do this without passwords and such. And then number 2 is configure the lab nodes to be a functional web server. And number 3 says configure all lab nodes to disallow password authentication for SSH. Well, now these I'm probably going to go in order, just because that's kind of how I was thinking of when I wrote the objectives. But let's say that number 1 and number 3 were swapped. So number 1 was configure all lab nodes to disallow password authentication for SSH, and then later it says set the nodes to be able to be managed by the Ansible user. Well, if you've disallowed passwords, that doesn't mean it's impossible to set up the nodes to be managed by another user, but you lose a method of doing that initial authentication to your servers. So the point being, read through all your objectives prior to starting your tasks, because some might, be in conflict with one another. Conflict as far as if you do this thing, you won't be able to do something else. And then others might complement each other, such as if you take a look here, configure all lab nodes to be a functional server, and then all the lab nodes need to have a particular index page. I could probably do that all in one playbook versus it being a separate thing. But getting right to it, so I'm in my Ansible control node, and I just have my one user, my admin user here, and I have given myself an inventory file. And if I were to cat that, I have these managed nodes, which if you've watched some of my videos so far, you'll get to know and love labrel AN01 through 4. So looking over the objectives, I think I'm going to go ahead and start with the actual number 1 objective I've given myself, and it says set up all lab nodes to be managed with the user Ansible. So there may be some question of, do we use Ansible on our control node and that's how we're connecting, or do we need to configure Ansible on the control node to be using a different user other than whoever's logged in to try to connect? I would imagine on the RHCE exam, any instructions that come with your objectives are going to be pretty specific. While there's not always, just the one way to solve something, I would imagine that there's not going to be much ambiguity because they're going to be wanting you to do a particular thing. For this, what I have in my head is I'm going to make another user on this control node, and from that user, I'm going to manage the other nodes. So let me go ahead and do my user add, which I guess I could do if I wanted to do that as a playbook. I could do this. So let's do vi create local user YML, and we're going to name our play create the Ansible user, and the host I'm going to do this against is localhost, and we are going to become yes. And all right, so for become password, I'm just going to pass that into the command for that, which I could do it as a variable. We'll do it as a variable. It'll give me a chance to practice some stuff. And so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to make a file, and I'm going to put that information in an encrypted file. So we're going to use a file that will be called become pass, and that file is going to set Ansible become password. And so that should, or actually no, is that what I need? Yes, it is. As I was thinking, one of my earlier sessions, I was confused about like become user and such, but no, become password, I believe, is what I'm going to want for that. And of course, if it doesn't work, then we can do something a little different. So our tasks, this will be pretty simple. Name, make the user, and we're just going to use the user command for that. The name is going to be Ansible. State is going to be present, and I'm going to use a couple of other settings within the user module. And what I'm going to be using is the generate key. So without using question, this will not override existing key unless, all right, so I think that's what I want. And then if I wanted to, I can set a comment and all that. So I'm just going to do generate SSH key. Go ahead and take care of that process. So let me go back into my playbook. Generate SSH key, yes. So that should be all I need to do against my local host to make this work. So I'm going to use Ansible Vault to create my my encrypted file. We called that become pass. I have to feed it a vault password here. And we're going to set a variable, Ansible become password. And we're going to set it to the super secret password of monkey123. All right. Save that. All right. So one of the things I will probably do on the exam with any playbook is run a syntax check, as that can uncover maybe some bonehead things you might have in your playbook there for syntax. Helps to spell syntax correctly. All right, so yep, I did have an issue. Vars file not valid attribute for, vars files needs to be plural. There we go, everything else looking over it looks good. So let's run that syntax check once again. All right, attempting to decrypt. Obviously that makes sense because we did not give it any direction there. This time I'm going to do the -C, which is like doing a dry run. So I'm going to do ask vault pass. We'll feed it our vault password so it can read the file. I guess that's not going to show much changing of anything. So let's try to run it. So Ansible playbook, and we're going to do our playbook name and then ask vault pass. All right, so supposedly we've created an Ansible user. Let us cat etc pass w, or I guess I could do just ID Ansible. All right, there is a user, and sudo ls-lar home Ansible. All right, and it looks like it has went ahead and made our SSH key and such. So that is awesome. So that piece, as far as being able to make a user using a playbook, that piece is done. So I'm going to sudo su-l Ansible, because we have not actually set a password for this user, and so therefore I'm having to use sudo for this because I have to be root to be able to get into this. All right, so I'm now here as my Ansible account, and we need to get our not web servers, but all of our lab servers going. So what I'm going to do, just to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to make me a directory. I'm going to make me a directory called work. CD into that, and we're going to create a couple of things here. First, I'm going to make my inventory file, and I'm going to make a config file. And all I'm going to do in the config file, I'm going to say defaults, and I'm going to say inventory equals home Ansible work inventory. All right, so next we need to get our lab nodes configured to be able to use our Ansible user. So we're going to create a playbook, and it's going to be configure admin. We'll just do configure admin.yml. Now there's going to be a decent bit of stuff that needs to happen with this playbook, so let me go ahead and put in some of the preliminary information. You don't necessarily have to do name for your play, or at least I would imagine not, unless your objective specifies that you do. But I like doing that just to help keep stuff organized. But the thing to remember is that they're not, or at least everything that I have gathered, Red Hat is not looking for, the most elegantly written playbook that, runs the most efficiently, all that kind of stuff. They're just looking for something that works. So, if you omit names of stuff, it's probably not it's not the end of the world. Just make sure that whatever it is that you write is going to function for you. So we're going to do configure remote nodes, and host will be all, become is going to be yes, and let's see, become user we're not going to specify. I'm going to do another vars file. No, I won't do that. I'll just do that via the command line, which I'm not sure on the exam how I would handle that if I'm required to make a playbook to do this kind of thing, if it will be wise for me to be feeding it manually a password. It'll be something I have to think about. If you have insight about that, well, I guess I'm not going to ask for that because that would probably break an NDA. Anyway, back on track. So we are going to become tasks. All right, so for tasks, I like to just list out the names of my tasks so I can think through the things I need to do, and then later I'll fill out what's actually going on in the tasks. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is create the Ansible user on all of the servers. After that, we need to copy the ID RSA pub to authorized keys. But before we do that, we need to create the .ssh folder. And let's see, what else? So after that, we need to edit the Sudoers file to allow for that privilege escalation without passwords. And I think that's everything that we need to do. So for the user, same deal. Name is going to be Ansible. State is going to be present. And we'll use the file module for this. And the path is going to be home ansible.ssh. State is going to be directory. I'm going to do notify fix permissions. Because there's a particular handler that I want to run after doing. Well, I guess I don't have to do that as a handler. I could probably just do another task. And I'll do that. All right, so that's going to make our directory. Then we need to copy, or already had that name there. So for here, we're going to use the, just realized I made a mistake. Sorry for getting out of my train of thought there. We use the copy module, and the source is going to be home ansible.ssh id rsa.pub, and the destination is going to be home Ansible SSH authorized keys. And we'll go ahead and set the permissions as well. So group Ansible, not groups plural, but group Ansible, owner Ansible, and the mode that this usually is 0600, I believe, for that. All right, then we are going to, we'll use line and file for editing the Sudoers file. And the path is just going to be /etc Sudoers. The line that we want to add is going to be Ansible all equals all, no pass wd all. I still need to go over the syntax for like doing validation of that. State is present. Then the last thing that I want to do is fix the SSH permissions. And for this, I believe I can use the stat module. But let's make 100% sure. So Ansible doc as stat. Stat might just be, yeah, all stat's going to do is get us, oh yeah, what am I thinking? I'll just use the file module for that. No, I guess I was thinking of stat because you can get that information with it. So VI, the reason why I'm doing this after is I don't want to be in a situation where my, I guess it wouldn't matter because I'm on a privileged user, but it's not going to be the end of the world to do this. So file, path, home, Ansible, SSH, state is directory, and we'll set the permissions this time. You know, I don't think I need to do this. I think I can do this at the beginning of that. We'll see what happens. So owner is Ansible, group is Ansible, and mode, this is usually 0700 for that. So we're going to make our user. We're not going to worry about password or anything because the end goal is the key-based authentication. We will go and copy our key to authorized keys, and we'll edit the /etc Sudoers file. Now what I'm going to do first, instead of doing this on all, I'm going to just set one of our hosts. Almost forgot my little 3 dots at the end. There we go. I think, no, I had that at the beginning. Okay, cool. All right, so Ansible playbook, syntax check. All right, seems like it liked what I had there. And let me cat something real quick. Just wanted to make sure I was doing what I was doing. Okay, so Ansible playbook, configure admin. We're going to become the remote user we're going to use as Eddie admin because right now the Ansible user doesn't have any privileges to do anything. Lowercase k to feed it the SSH password, uppercase K to feed it the become password. And just for giggles, let's do a dry run of it. Okay, so the issue here is we haven't trusted the fingerprints of all of the servers just yet. So let's do this. So the admin lab rel an01. Yes, we want to trust that. We're not going to finish it. Rinse repeat for all of these. It's probably a quicker way to do this. Oh, 5 doesn't exist. Okay. So now let's try our playbook again. Okay, well I must have fat fingered the password there. I think we can do this without the -c. All right, so that made an Ansible user. We created the SSH, we edited Sudoers. Okay, so let's put it to the test. So Ansible at lab rel an01. That looks good. We did not have, we're not asked for a password, and let's just do sudo hostname or ask for a password there. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to work for all of our other nodes. So let me go back into my playbook, and we'll change this lab to all. Configure admin. Again, I still need to use my other admin account because not all of the servers are going to be ready just yet. And let's see what happens. All right, that makes sense. We have one server not being changed, but the others are being changed. Cool. So let's test this out real quick. We can do Ansible all mping. This is going to be using my actual Ansible account, and we're able to ping everything. And let's see, Ansible all mping, and we're going to become. Sweet. So that should work. And just because I'm paranoid, Ansible lab rel. Let's go to number 4 this time. Good. And sudo vi. Excellent. All right. So that piece is done to set up all the nodes to be able to be managed with the user Ansible. All right, so the next thing we need to do, looks like we need to make a web server, have that web server have a particular index page, and fix the disallow password authentication for SSH. So let's do the SSH piece first, just to knock that out, since we know that we have key-based authentication and it is working. So there's a couple of ways of handling this. I guess I could do a template if I wanted to of sshd_config, or I can just use line and file to make a change. So what I'm going to do actually is go out of my Ansible user and back to my administrative user here, and we're going to do sudo cat etc ssh d ssh etc sshd config. There we go. And so what we're going to want to do for this is change password authentication from yes to no. So what I'm going to do, since I'm in a GUI environment, I'm actually going to copy this. We're going to go back into our Ansible account. I'm going to go into our work directory, and we are going to make another playbook, configure ssh.yml. I'm going to do this against all of the hosts. Obviously going to have to become for this. And the tasks, disallow password auth. We're going to use the line and file module for this. And we're going to use regex, or regular expressions. And what we're looking for is a file that or a line that, actually this might just straight up match rather than say like line begins with. And what we're going to do is specify what we want the line to be. And that is password authentication no and state present. Let's double check a couple of things real quick. I just want to make sure that I'm thinking of this right. So regex looks for every line of the file for state present, the pattern to replace if found. Yep, that's what I want. And I could do a backup of the original file. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to do, but for this, I'm not going to do that. All right, so that's really all we need to do to make that configuration be right. So let's run it. I misspelled configure for that. Gathers facts on everything. Oh. Yeah, that would be an important thing I need, is what file are you actually looking at or looking for? So path etc ssh sshd config is what we want for that. So let's try this again. All right, and let's hope that I can still log in. Yep, I can, and then this should be disallowed. Ah, there was one thing that I forgot to do with that, and this makes perfect sense. So let us, let's go back into our playbook. If I make this change, then I would need to restart the SSHD service. Didn't think about that. Probably maybe a better way to do this would be to have written like a handler, so notify and then do this, but for the sake of argument, we'll just make this happen. So there really shouldn't be any change to the file. Surprised that changed. All right, well, let's see if I've hosed my environment. All right, so I can log in there. That's important. Okay, good. And so that is what we want, because I don't have any keys configured for Eddie_admin, so that account can no longer do that. So one thing actually I'm curious though, I'm going to do an Ansible ad hoc command, and we are going to cat SSHD_config to become for that. What I'm looking for, okay, I see what it is. So we have two directives for that. Probably not the end of the world though, so I guess what I needed to have done was explicitly say begins with, because otherwise, yeah, I guess it would have matched both lines. So good to know. All right, and then now for the last couple of tasks, which is making the web server. This is going to be the fun piece. So I'm going to go ahead and make a template file, because that's what I'm going to use to create the index.html. So I'm just going to make index.j2. This is going to be very easy. Now this isn't saying I need to have any particular HTML formatting, so I'm going to interpret this as just literally have the words. So we're going to use a variable, and we'll just use Ansible facts, host name. We'll skip a line, and there's another Ansible fact that is all IPv4 addresses. I just know that is a fact. Hopefully I spelled that right. I think I did. And so we're going to take care of all the web server stuff with one playbook. So configure web server.yml. So deploy web server. And do this against everything. Become yes. Tasks. Now there's a number of tasks that we're going to need to do with this. And some might not be necessary, but it's one of these, you're maybe not 100% sure everything that you have on your system. So I'm going to be, like super careful with what I'm doing. So first I need to install packages. I'm going to need to configure the firewall. But before I do that, I want to configure the services. I want the firewall running and enabled already, and same for HTTPD. Then we'll configure the firewall, and then we'll deploy index.html. And I shouldn't have to restart Apache for that, because I'm not actually changing the configuration of the service. So here we go. We'll use the yum module name, and we can use a comma separated list for this. So the big things we need are HTTPD and firewall D. State present. I'm choosing not to use latest because this is something I'll have to think about on the exam as well. I don't know if they would be looking for everything to turn out as okay or some things to turn out as changed, because if you do latest and there happens to be an update for HTTPD, then this is going to be a changed, right? Because it's going to go to the latest package. But present, just once it's installed, it's there. So I'm not quite sure how I would handle that on the real exam. That'll be something for me to think about. So we'll use the service module for this. So name, and this I'm actually going to have to loop through. So I'm going to go ahead and set up for that. The state is going to be started, and we are going to have enabled yes, and that enabled yes is a key theme, because remember, everything has to survive reboots. So we'll do our loop. We'll have a little list here of HTTPD, firewall D, configure the firewall. So we'll use the firewall D module. And if you're on a system where the firewall D is not already installed, this needs to happen after you do the package install. If you happen to do firewall D as your first task and it's not installed, it's going to complain that the module is not going to function. So we can do service or port. I'm just going to use port for this. ADTCP. State is enabled. We want to allow the traffic. I'm not going to specify a zone. I'm just going to let it do this on the default zone. Immediate is yes, and we want to have permanent as yes, because again, it needs to survive a reboot. So we got that. And now for the index.html file. So we'll use the template module for this. The source is going to be index.j2, and since we're just staying in this directory, we don't need to do a full path for that. And is it destination or is it path? Let me make 100% sure. When in doubt, check. All right, destination. That would make sense. That's going to be www or var www html index.html. I'm going to go ahead and set the owner and group to Apache, and the mode's going to be 0644, which is usually what that is for a web page. And that should be everything that we need. So let me take a look for some syntax errors. That looks good. Indentation looks okay. All right, so we'll save this. Ansible Playbook. Syntax check. And one reason why I like doing the syntax check is if there is some silly thing that you've missed, you don't have to run through the whole playbook. Or actually, it's not going to run through the whole playbook, but it'll, I might not actually be saving time with that. I'll have to think, maybe I'll time it one day. So syntax check looks good. I'm pretty confident in this playbook, so I'm going to go ahead and just run it. Configure web server.yaml, and let's see what happens. So the install packages is going to take a minute or so because all these VMs I reverted to a snapshot that was basically just a fresh install of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. All right, so looks like Firewall D was already configured the way we wanted. I mean the service at least, and deploy index.html. All right, so moment of truth. curl http lab rel an01/index.html. All right, that looks good. These should only have one IP address configured on them. Wasn't sure if I would show loopback or not. All right, so it looks like we have everything that we need. Now on the exam, I'm not sure if you would have the ability to wipe out whatever your environment is, because I imagine we're going to be working with VMs. That would just kind of make sense, because I don't think for every single RHCE candidate they're going to set up like physical machines for us to be able to work with. But I'm not sure if we'd be able to take snapshots and such of said VMs. I just don't know if that much of the environment is exposed to us. But if you had a ton of time, it might be worth, and if you have something like this where, you have to test a playbook to actually set up nodes, it might be worth trying to blow them away and see if that works. But I'd be cautious about that because of time management and such. But for this objective, I had to create playbooks to configure systems to a specified state. Those systems are in that state. And I guess there's one other thing we can do. Let's rerun the configure web server, because in theory, Ansible Playbook will work better for that. Because in theory, everything should just be showing OKs. All right, so we got that. Let's run the configure SSH again. All right, and the restart SSHD, yeah, that would be a change. So probably what I would rather do is do that as a handler for the if the disallowed changed. Let's see, configure. Okay, so this one I'm actually not going to be able to run anymore, because remember we had to run this as my Eddy admin account, which I guess I could run it as I could do this as the Ansible user now. So let's see if this gives us a bunch of OKs. Yep, the user should be there. That directory should be there. The file should be there. Yep, so that gives us a bunch of OKs, and I think that was it. Other than the initial creation of the Ansible user, but of course, well, I guess I could do, let's go back to my Eddy admin account, and we'll copy everything. Actually, I have to do that with sudo. Home Ansible work. Let's go back into our Ansible user. All right, let's cat the, well, that was just create local user. Okay, yeah, we didn't necessarily need to do that. Might edit that out. So at this point, I think I've met the objective. I have created playbooks to configure systems to a specified state, and I have confirmed that, running the playbooks more than once, that the systems are staying in that state. So I think I'm ready to go with at least making playbooks on the exam. Remember, if you enjoyed this video and found the content useful, or maybe enjoyed or found the content useful, make sure you do click like and feel free to share it with others. Thank you again, returning subscribers, for watching another video. And if you're watching and haven't subscribed, make sure you click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do. For everyone, thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.